Hi everyone, this is Randy Stam, your instructor for the Human Behavior and the Social Environment here at Rutgers University. This is my supplemental lecture for Module 2. My hope is that these lectures will not be a drain on your energy and your spirit, but rather that you will be able to take something new, a different perspective, and to maybe take a deeper examination of some of the issues that are presented in the video lectures, the readings, and the written lectures. My full-time job is not working for Rutgers. I actually am only an adjunct here. So my full-time job actually is working for a public school in a middle school. So I have the excellent opportunity of being able to see how so many of these theories play out in day-to-day experiences. And my hope is that through this semester and through doing these video lectures, we'll be able to demonstrate or show how some of the theories might play out in real-life terms. So we'll hopefully be able to bridge the gap between theory and practice. I teach a class, this course, The Human Behavior and the Social Environment, on our Newark, New Jersey campus, and I wanted to be able to make sure that some of the key points that I raise in my in-person class are also raised here in the online class. So hopefully you will find the information stimulating and will hopefully be able to encourage you to think deeper about these issues. And also you can feel free to respond to anything that is posted here in this video lecture when you are doing your discussion thread for this week. So some key concepts that I believe are truly important for us to understand as we're going to begin our work into our experience in human behavior in the social environment is that each of us has a personal ideology, and this is going to shape the way that we are going to see the world. So a personal ideology is the set of principles that we use to judge the world around us, which is completely subjective in nature. And it's subjective in nature because our personal ideology is rooted in our unique social variables, which are individual components of our identity. So for example, each of us has a racial identity, a gender identity, an age, an ability status, sexual identity, socioeconomic identity, a faith tradition background, etc. All of those are social variables. When we find the intersection of those social variables in our life, in a given place and time, that's what we call our social location. And certainly the social variables in our life and in any given moment, our social location will influence our personal ideology. It's going to influence how we view the world around us, and it's also going to influence how we experience the world around us and how we experience other people in that world. And one of the key concepts in our work is what we call a life chance, which is just the opportunity for someone to provide themselves with positive living conditions and ultimately to have favorable life experiences. So just as you continue to think through these concepts, just like for you to think about how someone's social variables, how someone's particular social location might influence their opportunities to have positive living conditions and favorable life experiences. And when we are working with individuals, whether that be on the individual level, whether that be on the policy level, we always need to be mindful of the fact that our decisions have a direct impact on individuals and may have a direct impact on their life chances. That being said, it's important for us to be mindful that what happens in the larger world has real-life consequences for individuals, their families, and their livelihood. So this being said, it is truly important that we do not simply look at behavior alone. We really need to make sure that we are understanding what that behavior means in its given context. So just to make an example here, I want you to imagine that I'm entering into an apartment. It's maybe 5:30, it's been a long day. You know, I enter into the apartment, kick off my shoes, open up the fridge, maybe get a drink of some kind, sit down on the couch, turn on the TV, kick my feet up, and just watch some TV. You might take a look at that behavior and say, that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do when someone's coming home from work or maybe after, a long day of school or whatever the case might be. So if we just look at behavior alone, we're going to have one understanding of what it is that we're seeing. Now imagine how everything changes if I tell you that that is not my apartment. In fact, that's a stranger's apartment. I have no idea whose apartment it is. Now, when we see that context, we might say, this isn't someone who's just relaxing after work. This is someone who might be up to no good or someone who's committing some kind of a crime. So the importance here is that we recognize that context matters. We cannot just look at behavior. We have to understand the context in which that behavior is occurring. When we spoke about the person in the person and environment component, the video lecture does focus on the fact that there are multiple dimensions where we can be able to understand an individual: the biological, psychological, spiritual, cultural, and social. So it's truly important for us to be able to understand a person in all of these domains and for us to really have an understanding of who they are. When we're taking a look at environmental dimensions, again, we want to be able to recognize that there's multiple levels that we can examine an environment. We can look at something at the micro level, which is the smallest form. We might consider this an individual family, a small group of individuals. So again, this is the micro level. If we're taking a look at the meso level, this is more of an intermediary level. So this might be taking a look at understanding what's going on in a given community, in a neighborhood, in a particular school. These might be the meso level. So it's a little bit more broad than the micro level, but not as broad as the macro level, which focuses on the socio-political or institutional components, the laws, policy, financial considerations, things that take a look at the widest level of human interaction. Those are what we would call macro approaches. So when we consider how the individual person and their environment interact with each other, this is what we call the transactional approach, or again, some folks use the term person and environment, being able to understand the different dimensions of the person and being able to understand how they interact at the different environmental levels, the micro, the meso, and the macro. Now, let's use an example here that hopefully will bring this into a little bit more focus for us. In reading a lot of the dialogues that you had regarding why it is that folks came into social work, so many folks were talking about how they, they wanted to help people, and that's usually a reason why folks come into social work. They have this ability to help folks. They're usually very empathic. Folks tend to want to talk to them, and these are often some of the initial reasons that thrust people into our work. So that's the person part. But I think it's important for us to remember that we are part of a larger institution. As social workers, we are part of the social welfare institution. And as such, we need to be mindful that we are agents of this larger institution. So I've listed here a number of different programs that might fall under the guise of social welfare. So for example, social welfare programs might try to find homes for parentless children, might try to rehabilitate those suffering with drug and alcohol addiction, might try to treat those with mental illness. We might try to improve quality of life for the elderly, to meet the financial needs of the poor, to encourage criminals not to recommit offenses, to provide child care services for working parents, to seek medical assistance to those living with cancer or HIV, to serve families who are those that are victims of natural disasters, or to provide adequate housing for those who are homeless. So it's important that our desire to help people is not enough. It's a great starting place, but we need to recognize the environment or the institution in which that work occurs. Now, we might take a look at all of these and think that these are all pretty worthwhile causes. But now we need to also be mindful of how our personal ideology plays a part in how we view this particular social welfare system. So some questions I want for you to think about considering those different programs are all of those people deserving of assistance? Are all of the people in that previous slide, are they all equally deserving of assistance? Is there a hierarchy? What makes the difference? And do you think more or less resources should be placed into any of these issues? These are incredibly important questions to ask because how we view these different issues are influenced by our personal ideology, by our own experiences, by our own worldview. So some folks might say that we definitely should not necessarily be providing a ton of money to encourage criminals not to recommit offenses. We really need to be providing funding to find homes for parentless children or to treat those with mental illness. So our decisions and how we view this work are most certainly influenced by our personal ideology. So moving forward, one of the key activities that a lot of my students really enjoy that I do during our first week of the human behavior class is I just run through a number of slides that are some scenarios that consist of the day in the life of a social worker. What would you do? What would you think? What would you feel if any of these circumstances you were to come across? These are all real circumstances that some of my colleagues in a variety of settings have encountered. So this is not a clinical class. So this is not going to be the forum for us to debate what specifically, would we do, what clinical interventions would be utilized, but more so for you to be able to think about how your personal ideology, how your background would influence how you would view any of these different situations, what you would do, what you would think, what you would feel if you were to find yourself in any of these situations. A 9-year-old child discloses to you that her peers are making fun of her. She says people used to be friendly with her, but since the accident where she lost one of her arms, people have been behaving differently towards her. You meet a 27-year-old male in a specialized unit of a hospital for individuals who have unsuccessfully attempted suicide. You are with the client as he awakes from a coma and asks, "Where am I?" You meet with a mother of 6 children who tells you she is a sex addict and does not want to stop having children, despite her inability to financially support them. A 50-year-old male who has recently immigrated to the United States comes to your office and states that he has been the victim of an attack based on his perceived racial identity. He continues that the attack was perpetrated by 2 police officers and he is very afraid. You meet with a 23-year-old who has recently escaped from an undercover sex trade ring. She states that she has been gang raped on multiple occasions. You are working in a middle school and are in an after-school faculty meeting when the principal receives a phone call and steps out for a moment. Upon her return, she indicates that one of the students has been hit and killed by a train just a few moments ago, and multiple students witnessed the event. She requests all school social workers to come with her to the main office. A client you have been working with for the past 6 months shows up at your apartment very frustrated and wants to speak with you now. A 93-year-old man presents in your office depressed. He states that his partner of 43 years has just died and he does not know what to do without him. You meet a 13-year-old who has just run away from home. The teenager describes how her parents refuse to accept that she identifies as a female and insist on calling the teen a male and by her birth name. You are working on an inpatient psychiatric unit of a hospital. You go to meet with a 36-year-old patient. Upon entering the room, the patient throws a pile of fecal matter in your direction and insists that you leave immediately. You have been assigned the task of facilitating a group for individuals who have been convicted of more than one count of sexual abuse of children. So, considering some of those scenarios, how do you think your personal ideology and your worldview shape how you feel about each of those real-life scenarios? And again, I just want to remind folks that this is not the clinical class to debate what you specifically would do, but again, to think about you, how your experience shape how you look at the world and the role of the social worker, how you might engage if this was a scenario that you were faced in your practice. Hopefully that will get the ball rolling with you to think a little bit deeper about the concept of person and environment and its importance of understanding us, you as a person, and what components you bring to this work. Have a great week, everyone.